The cold bite of Caroline's moon was relentless. Mason Cade could feel it deep in his bones as he crouched behind a jagged outcrop of ice, his breath misting in the frigid air. His unit, a small but capable squad of Marines, was positioned along the outer perimeter of a makeshift trench line. The wind howled across the barren, frozen landscape, but the tension in the air was palpable, thicker than the snowflakes that fell in slow motion. "Steady, Marines," Mason muttered under his breath, eyes scanning the distance. His HUD blinked to life with incoming data, Hethrak activity detected. They were close. Too close. He glanced at his squad, a quick, silent check on their readiness. Specialist Davi Ortiz, the quiet techie, was adjusting his pulse rifle, his face a mask of concentration. Corporal Leah Givens, the sharpshooter, gave him a quick nod. Her hand hovered over the trigger of her sniper rifle, the barrel glinting beneath the sparse light from the distant gas giant. Private Lou, the rookie, fidgeted with the handles of his flamethrower, a bulky, lethal weapon that could both melt and maim in a heartbeat. His eyes were wide, unsure of himself, but Mason knew the kid had it in him. Mason's gloved fingers tightened around the grip of his own rifle. There was no turning back now. Command says they're launching the main assault in 5. Everyone be ready. Mason's voice was steady, calm, qualities drilled into him during countless engagements. But even his stoic demeanor couldn't shake the tension. He hadn't been on the front lines long, but he'd seen enough to understand what was coming. The Hethrak weren't like the others, alien races that had tried to conquer humanity in the past. The Hethrak were cold, calculating, and above all, confident. They had technology that left human weaponry looking like toys. Energy shields that could deflect bullets, plasma-based disruptors that vaporized targets with ease. To them, fire was primitive, something that belonged to a forgotten age. But humanity didn't play by their rules. And if there was one thing Mason knew about humans, it was that they thrived in the dirt, in the muck, when all odds were against them. The flamethrower in his grip was proof of that, unpolished, brutal, yet somehow more effective than any sleek, high-tech weapon. Damn right, Mason thought, watching the horizon. Let's see how they handle fire. The Hethrak appeared as dark, shadowed figures at first, silhouettes cutting through the icy haze, their forms distorted by the storm. The sound of their footsteps, heavy, mechanical, carried on the wind. They advanced methodically, as if the terrain didn't bother them at all. They didn't need to rush. They knew they were better, stronger. And that arrogance was about to be their downfall. Mason's voice broke the silence. Here they come. The first wave of Hethrak troops emerged from the storm. They were tall, armored, their advanced plasma rifles glowing faintly with blue energy. Mason didn't flinch. He knew they'd be on them soon, but his Marines were ready. The flamethrowers, though simple, would hit hard. And when you didn't have the luxury of advanced tech, you used what you had. And Mason had fire. Light him up, Lou, Mason barked, motioning for the rookie to advance. Private Lou nodded, a tense flicker of fear crossing his face, but he didn't hesitate. With a deep breath, he hefted the flamethrower and moved forward, his boots crunching in the snow. The first line of Hethrak soldiers began to raise their rifles, their shields coming to life. But they had underestimated the unpredictability of fire. Lou unleashed a burst. A stream of flame shot from the nozzle, the burst of orange and yellow like a living thing. The Hethrak had shields, but fire didn't care about shields. It ate through energy barriers like they were made of paper. The first soldier fell, engulfed by the flames, his armor hissing and cracking under the heat. The Hethrak scrambled, their discipline lines breaking into chaos as the fire consumed them. Mason felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. It wasn't sophisticated, wasn't clean, but it worked. The flames roared to life, an untamed force against the cold, mechanical precision of the Hethrak. The air smelled of charred metal and burning flesh, the sound of the fire drowning out everything else. The Hethrak fought back, their plasma rifles tearing through the air, but Mason's team was prepared. Ortiz fired his pulse rifle, taking down a soldier who tried to flank them. Givens, cool as always, picked off another from a distance, the sniper's shot precise and deadly. Meanwhile, Lou kept the flames sweeping, roaring like a beast that couldn't be tamed. Push forward. Keep the pressure on. Mason commanded. Don't let them regroup. The Hethrak were retreating now, their once formidable ranks dissolving in the face of a weapon they had dismissed as outdated. A few attempted to deploy energy grenades, but the fire burned hot enough to make the explosions mere flashes in the distance, igniting the frozen landscape into fleeting flashes of orange. But it wasn't enough. One of the Hethrak commanders, a towering figure with a dark cloak and a helmet that seemed to absorb light, stepped forward, barking orders. He raised a hand, and the surviving Hethrak soldiers formed up, their rifles glowing with new energy. "They're calling in reinforcements," Given said, her voice steady, eyes narrowing as she scanned the battlefield. "We need to end this now." Mason clenched his teeth. The flamethrowers had given them an edge, but they weren't invincible. The Hethrak were smarter than most, and they wouldn't be caught off guard again. "We need to push them back," he said, voice cold with determination. "Lou, keep that fire going. We're not giving them a chance to regroup." The rookie nodded, his face pale but determined. He adjusted the fuel tank on his back and stepped forward, letting loose another wave of fire. But as the flames spread, Mason felt a sudden shift in the air. The Hethrak commander was already calculating, his soldiers adapting quickly to the new threat. Mason's pulse quickened. This was far from over. The battle raged for hours. The Hethrak couldn't retreat, they had underestimated humanity's unyielding resolve, especially when wielding fire. But the Hethrak were relentless, and each moment that passed felt like a step closer to losing ground. The cold moon of Carillon began to turn from a silent, frozen wasteland into a furnace of blinding light and noise. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, Mason looked at his team. Bloodied but unbowed, they had pushed the Hethrak back, not with advanced weapons, but with sheer grit, using the most primitive of tools, fire. Mason wiped the sweat from his brow, despite the cold. He had a feeling that this was only the beginning. "Good work, Lou," he said, clapping the rookie on the shoulder. The kid's hands were shaking, but his eyes held a new fire, one that matched Mason's own. "We just proved something, didn't we?" Mason muttered, staring out at the burning wreckage. "The Hethrak think they've mastered everything, but they've never seen a human with a flamethrower." Mason Cade sat in the dim glow of the base's command tent, staring at the flickering holomap spread out before him. The icy surface of Carillon stretched across the projection, dotted with the locations of human and Hethrak forces. Red blips marked the positions of the alien invaders, and green dots indicated humanity's few remaining footholds. The lines were tightening, fast. "We can't keep pushing them back with just fire, Mason," Leah Givens said, her voice steady but laced with concern. She sat across from him, cleaning her sniper rifle with methodical precision. "I know," Mason replied, rubbing his hand over his jaw. He hadn't shaved in days. Sleep hadn't come easy either. There was something about the way the Hethrak soldiers moved, cold, calculating, that made every encounter feel like they were one step ahead. The flamethrower had been effective, but the Hethrak were learning. And their learning curve was fast. "I don't get it," Private Lou muttered, looking up from the flamethrower he was maintaining. "They've got shields, plasma rifles, particle disruptors. They should be wiping the floor with us. Why haven't they just overrun us already?" Mason looked at the rookie, his eyes hardening. "Because they're arrogant," he said, his voice low. "They think fire is beneath them. And right now, they're too stubborn to realize how much damage it can do." Ortiz, the team's quiet tech specialist, tapped away at his terminal, his eyes narrowing. "Well, stubborn or not, they're starting to adapt. I've been getting reports of a new type of Hethrak unit on the field. Different tactics. They're incorporating anti-flame tech into their gear, probably designed to counter us." Mason's hand gripped the edge of the table. "They can adapt all they want. We'll adapt faster." The tension in the room was palpable. Time was running out, and the Hethrak weren't going to sit back and let humanity's primitive weapons continue to take them by surprise. The next few hours would be crucial. But Mason knew one thing for sure: this battle was far from over, and humanity's survival depended on their ability to think beyond what was expected. The sun set behind the distant gas giant, casting long shadows over the frozen battlefield. The temperature on Carillon was dropping rapidly, the winds howling through the shattered ice and snow. But inside the reinforced bunker where Mason's unit had set up camp, the heat of battle remained in the air, a constant pressure that weighed down on everyone. Mason stood at the entrance, staring out into the horizon, the flame of the previous battle still fresh in his mind. The Hethrak hadn't retreated, not entirely. They were regrouping, consolidating their forces, and no doubt working on a counteroffensive. They wouldn't just send another wave of infantry. They'd come prepared to finish what they started. "Command's calling it," Ortiz said, his voice cutting through the tension. "They've got a new plan. They want us to hold the line and get as many civilians to the evac zone as possible. But we need a distraction." Mason turned to face the team, meeting each of their eyes. "Distraction?" Givens spoke up, her voice sharp. "A diversion, Mason. Something big enough to pull their attention away from the evac point. We've got the flamethrowers, but they know how to counter them now. We need something else, something they don't expect." Mason's mind raced. He wasn't one to throw tactics together on a whim, but desperation had a way of driving creativity. Then it hit him. "You're right," he said. "We'll give them a distraction. But not just any distraction. Something they'll never see coming." The night air was biting as Mason and his squad made their way to the edge of a sprawling Hethrak outpost. They had spent hours preparing, gathering their supplies, and rigging their gear for the operation. Mason had kept the details to himself until now, letting the others assume it was just another plan to buy time. "What's the plan, Mason?" Lou asked, his voice tight with anticipation. Mason didn't answer immediately. Instead, he checked the flamethrower one last time, making sure everything was locked in place. "We're going to show them something," he said, his voice low and focused. "Something they'll regret underestimating." Leah raised an eyebrow. "You don't mean?" "I do," Mason said. "It's time to remind the Hethrak that fire isn't just a weapon. It's a force of nature." They reached the outskirts of the Hethrak camp under the cover of night. The base was surrounded by a thin, energy field that pulsed with a faint blue glow, an electromagnetic barrier designed to keep out any uninvited guests. But Mason's squad wasn't interested in conventional approaches. Ortiz had hacked the security systems hours ago, bypassing the field and creating a window of opportunity. They now stood in the shadows, just outside the perimeter. "I'll trigger the explosives," Ortiz whispered. "On your mark." Mason nodded. "Once the field drops, we move fast. Lou, you're on the flamethrower. Take out anything that tries to stop us. Leah, cover him from the rear. Ortiz, you're with me, stay on comms." The squad took their positions, and Mason gave the signal. Ortiz tapped a few keys on his wrist pad, and in an instant, the energy field flickered and collapsed. "Now!" Mason shouted. Lou unleashed the first blast of fire, a searing wave that burned the cold air with a fury. The first Hethrak guards turned toward them, too late to react as the fire engulfed them. Their energy shields fizzled and cracked, the fire eating through their defenses like paper. The screams of the soldiers were drowned by the crackle and roar of the flames. Mason and Ortiz sprinted forward, ducking into the smoke-filled chaos. As they moved deeper into the compound, the night erupted with gunfire and explosions. Hethrak soldiers scrambled, their previously disciplined formation shattered by the unpredictability of the attack. Leah's sniper rifle cracked from behind them, taking down two soldiers trying to flank Mason's team. Lou, still spraying fire in wild arcs, was a whirlwind of destruction, his flamethrower turning every corner of the camp into a burning furnace. Ortiz worked quickly, planting explosives on key structures, power generators, communication hubs, and ammo depots. The idea was simple: cause as much chaos as possible, disrupt their ability to regroup, and make sure they couldn't use their advanced technology to retaliate immediately. "We're almost there," Ortiz said, his voice tight with focus. One more charge in. The ground beneath their feet shook violently, throwing everyone off balance. A massive Hethrak war machine, something they had only seen in reports, emerged from the smoke. It was a hulking armored vehicle, a tank-like monstrosity bristling with plasma cannons and energy shields. Mason's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't part of the plan. But the flamethrower wasn't just a tool for infantry, it was for moments like this. Mason made a quick decision. "Lou, hit it." Lou hesitated for a split second, but then he understood. He aimed the flamethrower's nozzle at the massive machine, the fire erupting with a ferocity that sent shockwaves through the air. The first wave splashed against the energy shield, nothing. But Lou didn't stop. He adjusted the angle, and the flame hit the joints, the exposed areas where the shield didn't cover. The machine screeched, its plasma cannons sputtering and shutting down as the fire melted through its armor. Mason smirked. That's how you show them fire isn't just a weapon. It's the thing that burns even their best plans to the ground. The Hethrak were learning. But so was humanity. And Mason Cade had just shown them that sometimes the simplest weapon was the deadliest. The chaos of the past 24 hours had left its mark on Mason Cade. His body ached, his hands were stiff, and every breath felt heavy in the cold, dry air of Carillon. The battle had stretched on longer than anyone had expected, and the Hethrak had not yet shown any signs of surrender. Their arrogance had cost them dearly, but Mason knew that they weren't the type to give up without a fight. The war was far from over. Now, standing at the front of the remaining human forces, Mason looked out over the remnants of the once pristine landscape, now scarred and smoldering. The Hethrak had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to survive in the most brutal conditions. And it was fire that had made that point clear. But it was not just fire that had changed the course of this battle, it was the resolve of every human soldier, every Marine who had dared to stand in the face of superior technology and overwhelming odds. "Report," Mason barked, as his team regrouped behind him in the makeshift command tent. Leah Givens was the first to speak, her voice as crisp and focused as ever. "The Hethrak are regrouping. They're trying to pull together a counteroffensive. I estimate they've got enough forces to launch a second wave by tomorrow. They're smarter than we give them credit for, they're learning." Mason exhaled slowly. He had known that. The Hethrak were not just brute force, they were strategists. The question was whether their ability to adapt was faster than humanity's ability to outthink them. "We need to hit them harder," Mason said, his eyes narrowing. "Lou, Ortiz, get those flamethrowers recharged. We're going to make them regret ever thinking fire was a relic." Ortiz gave a short nod, tapping his wrist console to check the fuel levels. "I've got a few ideas for our next round of attacks. If we can get close enough, I can introduce them to a few surprises of my own." Lou, his face grim but determined, spoke up. "I won't let them get any closer. Not after what we've seen." "Good," Mason said. "We're not backing down. Not now." By nightfall, the plan was set into motion. They had to move quickly. This wasn't just about taking ground anymore, it was about taking the initiative. The Hethrak had learned to adapt to fire, but they hadn't yet understood how far humanity was willing to go to survive. Mason's team had their orders: disrupt the enemy's command center, sabotage their reinforcements, and leave them with no option but to surrender or die. Ortiz and Lou were at the front, moving with stealth and precision. The flamethrowers were more than just tools of destruction, they were symbols of humanity's willpower, the primal weapon that could tear through the most advanced technology. The Hethrak base was heavily fortified, but Mason knew that fire was the great equalizer. There were gaps in the armor of every fortress, every defense system. It was just a matter of finding them. And tonight, Mason was going to show the aliens that even the greatest war machines could not withstand the unrelenting force of human ingenuity. The squad approached the heart of the enemy camp under the cover of night. The wind howled, a constant reminder of the cold, but Mason barely noticed. His mind was sharp, his focus absolute. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. They would have one shot at this, and Mason wasn't about to waste it. Lou, carrying the flamethrower, moved silently beside him. His face was set, his jaw clenched. "We're in position," he whispered, his breath fogging in the freezing air. Mason motioned for the others to spread out. Leah positioned herself on a nearby ridge, scanning for any enemy movement. Ortiz crouched by a nearby console, already working to hack into the base's security systems. "Ready," Ortiz muttered into the comms. "Once I bring the shields down, we'll have a 10-minute window before reinforcements arrive. I'll take care of the perimeter, you handle the rest." Mason nodded. It was simple but effective. The key was speed. They had to strike fast and hard, before the HFY could regroup. Ortiz's fingers moved rapidly across his terminal, tapping commands. Mason didn't need to see the screen to know what was happening, he trusted Ortiz's skills. The signal came a few moments later, shields down. Without hesitation, Lou opened the valve on the flamethrower. A jet of fire erupted from the nozzle, crashing against the wall of the nearest HFY building. The structure's energy shields flickered, struggling to repel the heat, but it was no use. The fire didn't stop, it lit the walls, bending them, warping them under the relentless heat. The HFY soldiers, who had been guarding the perimeter, scrambled to react, but they were too slow. The fire swallowed them whole before they could even get their shields up. The sight was unnerving. Advanced warriors who, only hours ago, had thought themselves invincible, now nothing more than charred remains in the blink of an eye. Mason's pulse quickened. The flamethrowers were working, their weapon was working. "Keep moving," he shouted to his team. "We've got 10 minutes before they realize what's happening." The squad pressed forward, cutting through the base like a hot knife through butter. Every enemy that crossed their path was reduced to ash. The HFY tried to respond, firing their energy weapons from behind cover, but their efforts were futile. The flames reached everything. No one was safe. Mason felt his heart race as they pushed deeper into the compound. The command center was just ahead, its towering structure illuminated by flickering lights. If they could breach it, they could cripple the HFY's entire operation on Caroline. Leah's voice crackled over the comms. "Mason, they're moving reinforcements in. We've got incoming, 15 units, heavily armored." "Not fast enough," Mason grunted. "We'll be there before they can deploy." Moments later, they reached the command center. Ortiz was already planting explosives on the central door, preparing to breach the heart of the HFY's operations. 5 seconds, Ortiz said, glancing up at Mason. Mason's hand tightened around his rifle. "Everyone ready?" "Ready," Leah said, her sniper rifle trained on the horizon for any signs of incoming units. Lou gave a nervous nod, his hands tight on the flamethrower. "Let's finish this." The explosion rang out, sending the blast door flying off its hinges. Inside, the HFY command center was chaos. Aliens scrambled to their feet, their plasma rifles flashing. But they were too disoriented. Mason surged forward, firing his rifle at the nearest soldier. The shot hit home, and the HFY crumpled to the ground. Ortiz followed, dropping another enemy with a well-placed shot from his own pulse rifle. The flames from Lou's flamethrower poured into the room, consuming everything in its path. The HFY never had a chance. Within minutes, the HFY command center was in ruins. Mason exhaled slowly, looking down at the wreckage. This was it, the final blow. "This is our victory," he muttered under his breath. "This is humanity. We're not just here to survive. We're here to make them fear us." The HFY had underestimated fire. They'd underestimated humanity. And now, they'd learned what it meant to face the one thing that couldn't be controlled, the unyielding force of human willpower. As the flames continued to burn, Mason knew one thing was certain: the war for Caroline was over. And humanity had won.